Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thanks for downloading another episode of Wigs for Wigs. I'm Joe Cook, and I'm joined once again by our common panel of educator Bill Venezia, Judge Ed DeFazio, and Dr. Michael Buxbaum. It's the new year. It's 2026. It's been an eventful beginning to the new year. We kidnapped the president of Venezuela. We have ICE on American streets. We have the Supreme Court saying that the National Guard should not be on American streets, at least in certain cases, and other events happening. And we can talk about all of those. But I want to just start today by reading a short little thing. It says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, except on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. No person shall No, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the part I think is going to touch on a lot of things we're going to talk about today, or at least I plan to, and we'll see where the episode goes. But that, of course, I'm sure you all recognize from the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And we've had a number of cases lately where I would argue people perhaps have not received due process of law before being deprived of life, liberty, or property, whether we're talking about people on boats in the Caribbean or women making potentially a K-turn in Minneapolis, or running over an ICE agent, depending on your point of view. But there's a lot to talk about, and I want to just go around for everybody to give, what stands out to you most here in the new year. And we'll start with Bill.
Well, I'm for an administration that basically calls itself America First, to get involved in, bombing Iran, bombing Syria, getting involved in Nigeria, and culminating with Venezuela excursion. It seems to be an anathema to the MAGA people, and I'm disappointed in that they're not rising up. When you look at what's going on at home and how the ball has been dropped with regard to the economy and the damage that ICE is doing to industry in the United States with regard to the workforce, it's a shame. And to what end? We're pushing South America toward Europe. Europe just signed a big trade agreement with them, a free trade agreement, and also to China, who's invested billions of dollars there. So we don't even take care of home, and that's the sad state of the reality of the Trump administration. Now, my nephew Daniel tells me that I have Trump derangement syndrome and advises that I should read the Bible more. And I told him, I said, that's exactly what the Pharisees told Jesus when they quoted the Old Testament to him in the temple. So I'm in amazement that, the rule of law has been violated so much. And where is Congress? At least they stood up. The Senate stood up a little bit to this, with regard to war powers, which I'll defer to the judge to talk about the legality and the constitutionality of it. But it seems to me that, Congress should have been notified, and they weren't. They weren't until after the fact. And that's the sad state of affairs we find ourselves in.
Not only were they not notified, but Trump then said that he did notify the oil companies before the kidnapping of Maduro. So it wasn't that he just couldn't notify anybody, because he said
what does that tell you?
But let's come to the judge next.
Well, that was a very interesting point you made, Joe, about the president notifying the oil companies and not notifying the appropriate members of Congress, because obviously the appropriate members of Congress cannot be trusted, but our oil company executives can be. Now, there's an interesting sidelight that I didn't see at first until I had a conversation with my brother-in-law concerning the fact that Trump talking to the oil company executives is fraught with the potential of insider trading. And that's just an aside, but it shows you how cavalier, careless, reckless, whatever term you want to use, that our president is. He cannot stop shooting from the hip and not thinking of the long-range consequences of his language. But, you spoke about due process, and I'll tell you the one striking example, of course, in my mind, of lack of due process is what you mentioned, Joe, about these attacks on the speedboats. That clearly, in my mind, is illegal conduct. And those victims were afforded no due process whatsoever. But we can go on and on about that issue in different contexts. But
yeah,
that's what I have to say right now.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, if a police officer comes across a drug dealer on the street, he's not allowed to just blast away at him, correct?
No, of course not.
So,
of course not. In fact, to be honest with you, there's a Supreme Court case from many years ago on the subject of what was called the fleeing felon. And it was a case where a burglar was spotted by the police in the course of a burglary. And he ran. And the policeman shot the burglar and killed him. And the ruling was that is not permitted under that type of circumstance when somebody is running away from the police, even in the context of the person committing a felony. So anyway, that's...
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll have more to say about all of that, but I do want to come to the doctor.
Okay, well, going back to the issue of what's happening and what one feels is the most important, there is a quote which is attributed to Trotsky, and it says, you may not be looking for war, but war may be looking for you. So I would say if you are a superpower, there are certain things which are very hard to ignore. So from my point of view, when we, for example, look at Iran, nobody wanted Iran to have atomic weapons. I personally believe that if there was no interference by Israel or the United States eventually by using the higher-powered bombs, there would be a good chance that by now Iran would have had nuclear weapons because they were enriching uranium to 90%, which, for medical purposes, you need up to 5%. And, and then the whole Middle East would be a mess. And, if you have a radical Islamic regime, they are looking not at this life, but the next life. And if they feel they are doing something positive in terms of Islamizing the world, they don't mind killing large numbers of people. So in certain situations, you have to get involved. And in fact, right now, Iran has been emasculated. And I'm hoping, and there is a decent chance that the regime, which has destroyed the country and made it poor and totally dysfunctional, is going to fall. And that's a result of us getting involved. The same, I would argue, applies to Venezuela. Now, of course, you can argue about the legalities, but Maduro, nobody, not even the most leftist liberal, is going to say that Maduro was some kind of a liberal leader or a nice guy. It seems that he was a narco-trafficker. He put the country in ruins, and he did what Trump actually attempted to do, but he did it successfully, that he he kept his presidency despite losing by he only got 30% of the vote. as far as these boats, and again, you can argue the legality, but if there is a good intelligence that these boats were actually drug trafficking, then, I personally don't have much compassion for people who are trafficking drugs. So I would say, and then the fact that we extracted Maduro, that was like, again, whether you agree with it or not, that's another question, but just the ability of us to do it so surgically, it's like the Mossad. I was very impressed by the scale of the armed services, the Delta Force or whoever did it, that they were able to get in, get his wife and himself, kill about 40 to 100 guards, which are mostly Cuban, and get him out. Now, the question in Venezuela is going to be, are they going to be dealing with Delcy Rodriguez, who is kind of part of the Maduro government as long as she changes and starts cooperating, or are they going to promote at least another election or try to get the democratically elected government? So that would be my point.
I'm not shy about flexing American muscle, and I'm certainly not against getting rid of dictators. But you can at least try to pretend it's for humanitarian reasons and not immediately talk about we're going to get 50 million barrels of oil out of this. And, the Bush administration, whatever you want to say about them and what their true motives were, at least gave the facade that we were going into Iraq primarily to rid them of a brutal dictator, not for the oil, for Halliburton.
No, that was because he had weapons of mass destruction, which was bogus. And that's what that Bush, the other Bush administration.
Well, we moved on then from that to
did something similar to Noriega and basically convicted him in a court of law with due process. But here's the question: does the end justify the means?
Right.
Are we a nation building? When you look at what we did it for oil, plain and simple. Just as W did it for oil in the second Iraq War. And what are the implications? The implications are most of the oil companies really don't want to get involved because they want to keep the prices artificially high of oil. Mm-hmm. And also, too, it's too costly for them to go in there and revamp the oil industry because their refining mechanism is not up to par. Their oil is of a lower grade quality that basically, if refined, is going to do damage to that environment. Not that the Trump administration cares one bit of that. I think this is all predicated on basically making the price of oil lower. Hopefully, it's bet on their part for the midterm elections to basically say they're doing something about affordability, which is ridiculous. They're not.
But I would argue the price of oil is already low, by historical standards. The price of oil right now is about 58 barrels a gallon. It was at one point like 120. Mm-hmm. So it's already low. And all the oil companies say that in order to really make Venezuela a large producer, it will take $50 to $100 billion to invest because it's been left in shambles, and it will take years. So Trump is going to be dead and buried before the production is going to increase. So they are really, he's kind of making it kind of like as if people are going to think that suddenly we will be flush with oil and the price will go down to 30 barrels a gallon. But the problem is that if it is too low, it's not only them making profit, but if the price is too low, it's not really worth extracting it because the cost of extracting it will be more than the price of oil. So you have to also kind of balance that, especially the shale oil that takes a lot of effort and expense to get it out of the ground.
Just for sake of what used to matter, which is people having consistent views, but anyway, it doesn't anymore. But just in the 2024 presidential campaign, Donald Trump called Venezuelan oil, quote, horrible, tar, the dirtiest stuff you can imagine, and the worst oil probably anywhere in the world. So that was Donald Trump himself on the campaign trail in 2024, saying why we should not be getting involved in Venezuela.
I agree with the doctor 100% with what he just said, and your follow up as well, Joe. And this is why, and maybe it's me, but this is why I am continually confused by the conduct of the Trump administration, because it seems to me that, as I had said earlier, things are not being thought out. What is the end game? What is going to happen based on conduct? And I can't figure this situation with Venezuela. I can't figure it out because it does not make sense concerning the oil issue. Maybe somebody can help me with this. But
should I indulge my growing inner conspiracy theorist? Um, so you know what hasn't been in the news the last 3 weeks?
Epstein.
Yeah, we're coming up on a month since the deadline for the Epstein Transparency Act for all files to be released. We got, according to some estimates, 0.6% of the files released so far. And we are December 19th was the deadline for all files to be released in the Epstein Transparency Act. And nobody's talking about Epstein anymore.
They ran out of indelible markers.
Right.
And the redactors were basically working overtime, and they didn't want to pay for that. Doge told them no.
I mean, this is coming back to what you said earlier, Bill, about the Senate finally stepped up and did something, saying, you better not do anything else in Venezuela without us saying so or telling us so. Well, if he does, what are they going to do about it?
Probably nothing.
Right?
Nothing.
They passed the Transparency Act, the Epstein Act, 99-1 or 100-0 in the Senate and all but 1-1 in the House. He's clearly violated it. Well, Pam Bondi and the whole team have violated it. And what have they done? Nothing. So,
well, here's what they're worried about. Here's what Trump's worried about. He's seeing the end game, which is going to be interesting with regard to him getting kneecapped in the midterms. And if you look at Forbes magazine, his net worth in 9/9/25 was $4.3 billion. You know what his net worth is now? $7.3 billion. So he's feathering his own nest. He figures the end is near. He might as well sock it away. And he's going to create as much distraction as possible. And my biggest fear is that he uses ICE like the Gestapo to basically interfere with the election. And the more he gets away with, the more he extends it. He's like an adolescent. He's like we were when we were teenagers with our parents. Give an inch and take a yard.
Speaking about ICE and how Trump might use them and how he's already using them, can we speak a little bit, and maybe Judge, maybe I'll turn to you first for this, just about the subject of jurisdiction? What exactly is ICE's jurisdiction and what are they empowered to do legally? Because I've seen a lot of people saying they are not allowed to do just kind of typical law enforcement activity. And I'm wondering your take on that.
Well, that's true. They are charged with enforcing the immigration and customs laws of the United States, and of course, the definition of those laws, I'm not entirely familiar, but they do have limitations, and they're certainly not supposed to be conducting your typical law enforcement functions of a police force. Now, customs, in fact, has even more restrictions on what they're legally empowered to do. And to be frank with you, and now this is just my personal opinion, this is not a legal opinion. Mm-hmm. My personal opinion is that these customs guys under Director Bovino seem to be a more roguish group than ICE, perhaps. I don't know. All I know is this. I know this. I would not want to see heavily armed combat uniformed, masked men marching around Jersey City. I know that. I wouldn't care for it. And I don't know how far this is going to go. And I don't know what the remedy is, quite frankly. I don't know what the remedy is, because you're going to be told by our esteemed Homeland Secretary.
Secretary Barbie.
Yeah, Secretary, another one, and I know I could be roundly criticized for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Another one of the beauty queens, all right? She's going to say, well, they are performing immigration enforcement. And that's half right. That's half right, you see? And that's the problem. And, we can get onto the whole situation about the immigration enforcement and what's gone on. I just saw Senator Mark Warner interviewed this morning on CNBC, and he claims that 75% of the detainees from Virginia, and as he said, I can only speak about what I've seen in Virginia, and he claimed he has done the research on this. 75% of the detainees have no criminal record.
Yeah.
Now, that's very disturbing based on everything we had heard about what the focus of ICE was going to be. And that's not even bringing this up, the money that is being spent on this function. I don't know what the amount is, but it is a disgusting amount, I am sure. So, we do have reason to be frustrated, I guess.
When they advertise for ICE agents, they offer up to $50,000 signing bonus to come aboard. They have provided very little training. They haven't done half of the background checks of the people they added to the employment ranks of ICE. I mean, so it's a pretty unregulated group with absolutely no transparency. And I defer to your assessment of Homeland Security Secretary Noem. I'd rather call her Dale Evans. I thought she had a really good cowboy hat.
Well, I think she had a very good surgeon, because she looks really so much younger than she actually is. But nevertheless, I have slightly different take on it. First of all, there are a lot of people under Biden administration who came in illegally. So just because they don't have criminal record doesn't really make them legal. They are illegals. And Trump, whether you believe in his philosophy or not, but the majority of people voted him in, and he promised that he's going to deport people. So he's doing it. Now, those problems, such as the shooting of this lady, Renee Good, or other shootings, are generally related to the fact that the people do not cooperate or actively obstruct whether it's police officers or ICE are doing. So they are not exactly peaceful protesters. Peaceful protester is someone who stands at the side of the road and chants or has a sign, but doesn't actually try to grab somebody or touch the person or push them. And a lot of it has been happening. Now, this lady, and believe me, I don't want anybody to be killed, but this lady unfortunately did not cooperate with the police and just kind of sped off. And it is unclear, and I'm waiting for the investigation because the whole investigation hasn't been completed, whether that ICE agent actually was in her way or not. What's relevant to me, especially as a psychiatrist, is that the guy about 6 months ago was apparently also involved in trying to arrest somebody and was dragged behind a car after somebody hit him. And he may have been traumatized by that experience. So who knows? He may have overreacted. But I would rather wait until the investigation is completed. What's interesting is that when you look at Trump supporters, they all say that it was an act of self-defense. and all the people who are against Trump says that she was murdered. So it's before any complete investigation actually has been done. So in conclusion, I am very much for legal immigration to make it easier, because we need workforce, and unfortunately our women in our country don't have enough children. So we need the workforce and we need people, but we need to vet them, and we need to get people that we actually need, rather than have open border policy where people just sort of come in and you don't know who they are and what their agendas are. And even if 80% of them were just coming here to look for work and be productive and start a family, if 20% are here for other reasons, such as drug trafficking or crime or who knows what, then, that's not acceptable. So I would just close the borders, which Trump actually did to his credit, and just increase the legal immigration, where we will take people who are truly needed and will help the country prosper.
Yeah, but you have to remember this, though, and I agree with everything you've said, Doc, with a little bit of a nuance, perhaps. You know what we need in this country as far as labor goes? We need unskilled labor. We need the guys who we see performing the landscaping. We need people who work in the kitchens, because anyone can say this over and over again, but it's not true. You are not going to find Native Americans who want to do that work.
Eddie,
and what?
I'm sorry. You also need tradesmen. We do not have tradesmen.
Right, the guys. You're right, Bill, and I was going to continue. Who's going to do the roofing work? You walk around anywhere, almost anywhere in this country, and we see what the foreign-born people are doing for us. And this, unfortunately, this whole immigration thing, it got waylaid. We should have had comprehensive reform. We didn't, but that's all now in the past, so there's no use talking about it. But I don't know what the answer is here.
I would just say
Trump basically, did you hear what he had to say about immigration? That we need, when he was interviewed by the New York Times the other day, we need this type of thing. He even threw a little meat to dreamers that, something should be done. Now, do you have any faith that the hard work of immigration reform done in a bipartisan way would ever get done under this administration? It's impossible. The guy's a day trader. He doesn't basically put in the time. He doesn't put in the legislative time to basically build those bridges to get that done. And when something constructive was put together in 2024,
right.
What did he do? He leaned on the Republicans to block it. And it would have been such a step in the right direction, which would have never led to this. Judge, I have to ask you this question. Was that a good shoot? You've seen the video, and so have I, in Minnesota.
It's clearly a questionable shoot. I'll say that. And but I agree with what we've said. There has to be a full and fair investigation.
Well, that's what I want to say too.
Clearly, look, it started off that the agent was run over. That clearly is not the case. He wasn't run over. I don't know if her car made contact with him or not for sure. I don't know. If it did make contact, it was minimal at most. So it's a questionable shoot. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. Let me put that right. It shouldn't have happened. Now, is it criminal? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I would just say a couple things, coming back especially to what the doctor was saying a little bit earlier. And you just said too about a fair investigation. I'd like an investigation that is not just done by Kash Patel and the
Yeah.
FBI.
Yeah.
From reports, they are blocking Minnesota State Police and local authorities from participating in any kind of investigation. So that already raises alarm bells. Second, I want to come back to the doctor. You said kind of about psychologically feeling in danger and all about maybe he was traumatized from this past incident. After he shot her, he said he called her an effing bitch and he walked away casually and drove away. What do we make of that psychologically?
Well, if you went through, again, I don't know the man, so I don't know
Right.
his thought process, but one question I would have is if he went through that kind of a trauma, whether he should have been working, because the trauma affects you. It's just like when you are in a fire, then you will overreact to any fire subsequently.
Right.
So the question again, that's why I'm talking about there has to be a thorough investigation. And I completely agree that Kash Patel is not the only one to do it, nor is Tim Walz or Jacob Frey, because, it's all based on partisan issues and you can go into it from any angle you want. So it would have to be a bipartisan type of investigation where they look at ballistics or the body cameras and so on. So I totally agree he shouldn't have shot her, but having said that, he may have felt that he was in danger of his life. And she has to take, well, of course, unfortunately, she's deceased, but she or her actions were not, I always told my children that if you get stopped by the police, you cooperate with them and you say, yes, sir. And then if you feel that they abused you or did anything wrong, you can take them to court later. There are courts of law. But if you start even arguing or making the policeman angry, then you don't know. The policeman is a human being with all their pluses or minuses. He could be angry, frustrated, and if you make him feeling worse or angrier, then you don't know what he's going to do. So it's best to kind of cooperate, and then if you feel there was some kind of an illegal activity that the policeman has done, then there is code of law that that you can use. But just by opposing the police or speeding away, you are putting yourself in danger. So that's how I see it.
I think it's
What
just.
do you think? They're going to appoint a special prosecutor, Rudy Giuliani?
Right. It would have to be a neutral person, yeah.
Our old friend, the prosecutor of the state of New Jersey, is available, Alina Habba, because courts have ruled repeatedly that she is not legally in that job. So they can always appoint her as a special prosecutor. But it's also just and this ties into a number of these issues, the hypocrisy, the double standard, putting a cop at risk deserves to be punished. Well, what about all the January 6 people that were pardoned by Donald Trump on day one? Maduro deserves to be kidnapped in the middle of the night and hauled away to Brooklyn to hang out with P. Diddy because he was trafficking drugs. Well, what about the former president of Honduras, who Trump just pardoned a few weeks ago, who was convicted of trafficking hundreds of tons of drugs into the United States? The immigration with, saying that all of these people, look, Kristi Noem has claimed that dozens of rapists, murderers, pedophiles among illegal immigrants have been rounded up in this recent action in Minneapolis without showing any specific cases to back that up. And it just reminds me of the Albrego Garcia case from several months ago, where they made this guy out to be, they made him sound like he was a cross between El Chapo and Osama bin Laden. And ultimately, the only thing they ever charged him with was driving undocumented people from one place to another. That was literally the only criminal case they ever brought against Albrego Garcia. So the disconnect between the messaging about who these people are that are being rounded up in these ICE raids and the reality, just there's a wide gap there between what Kristi Noem and Donald Trump are saying they're arresting and what they actually are arresting. And there's still just a simple fact, and this is just a fact, it's just numbers. Barack Obama deported more people than Donald Trump has on a yearly basis. And there wasn't this outcry because it wasn't the cruelty to it. Those people had due process and they were deported. right? There is a way you could do this without having mass people who 5 years ago claimed they couldn't breathe with masks on, but that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Charging into schools, grabbing kids at dismissal time, and shooting people. I mean, that doesn't have to happen to deport people who are here in an undocumented way, an illegal way. That's my issue.
Yeah.
I'm not against deporting people, but deport them in a way that isn't cruel. We've talked about that before.
No, you're right. I mean, I absolutely agree with that because I read the same thing that Obama deported more people. So my question was, is it because Obama was kind of not as controversial of a figure as Donald Trump? So is it the media that's making it, and that Trump elicits so much emotional response? Like even me, who is like a neutral person, when I see Trump, I just feel nauseous. The way he talks, it just makes me angry. When Obama talked, even though I didn't agree with some of his policies, it was kind of calm and he kind of sounded very reasonable. So the question is, how much of it is truly how it is, or is it just that people tend to, well, it's Trump, so they kind of overreact to these things? So is he really more cruel or is he not? So that's
I think it's that question. Trump. I think it's that Trump, that Kristi Noem, that Pete Hegseth, whoever you want to talk about in this administration, they want that to be the image that they're putting out there.
Yeah.
That they are cruel. Stephen Miller. I mean, is anybody who nauseates me as much as Donald Trump, it's Stephen Miller.
Oh, yeah, 100%. He's got that face. He's got that punch me face.
Yeah, exactly. But right, he was talking about the other day.
Unfortunately, he's probably been punched too much or has never been punched.
He was talking about the other day that international law is just for the weak people, that the international law should be based on iron and blood and steel. I mean, that's like straight up Third Reich stuff. I mean, that's just sickening. And I don't remember who the official was the other day also who said that about the Maduro thing, that international law is weak and gay. That was their statement.
Wow.
Like
I guess maybe that might have had something to do with Maduro's dancing. All right, but can I just? I don't want to put. I don't want to put too fine a point on this about the deportation numbers from the Obama administration. The number is correct, but many of those deportations during the Obama administration had to do with apprehensions at the border.
At the border, right? Yeah.
And so that number is distorted.
Yeah.
In comparison to what's going on now, and that's the difference. And also under Obama, the focus was on criminals. But so that's why that comparison, when we hear that, it's not accurate.
I know it's not a perfect comparison, but
yeah, it isn't. And
people complain they were Latinos.
Well,
I think the issue is that the Trump administration wants to put out this image of being
I agree with you.
To immigrants.
I agree with you. You know what? I've never seen, and I know we shouldn't use the word never, but I've never seen an administration that has as many loudmouths in it as this administration. Almost everyone who's interviewed speaks in a very brazen and loud tone. I find it to be offensive, and I think many right-thinking people do. And I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit too. I think the majority of people in this country would agree with what we're saying. The four of us, they would agree with what we're saying. And, I can only hope that the Senate is going to continue to try to do the right thing on some of these issues.
Well, they can start by hauling Pam Bondi in to answer questions about the Epstein files, and then
Well,
have faith.
that's going to come back, Joe. I think that we've discussed this before, as you know, and I think that the Epstein matter is not in any way finished. It's going to come back, and it will come back because we have now our new leader, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to take us out of the wilderness. All right, she will lead us. She will lead us out of this wilderness. And
she's the new Messiah.
Good old Moses Taylor Greene.
But about these Epstein files, again, I am not a conspiracy theorist. However, Biden had all of that for 4 years, and he hasn't done anything with it either. So my guess is that there are a lot of powerful people we don't even know about. People who have money or people whose names are not very well known who are implicated, because how could a guy who basically was not a very good financial trader and was a unlicensed teacher, when he died, his wealth was $900 million. That was never explained. So the reason for all the reduction, wiping out the names, or that half of the page is blackened out, and that it's not been so slow, is because there are a lot of people mentioned there, but they're both Democrats 100%. And Republicans, and these are people who support various political parties by millions of dollars, I think that's why it is, because if Biden wanted to, if there was something terrible about Trump, Biden would have published it, because he had it for 4 years, and they tried all kinds of lawfare to get Trump out of running.
I agree, but the difference now is that they are now violating a law that was passed by Congress by not releasing it.
But I would bet that if Biden or Kamala Harris was in charge, she would do the same thing. I doubt that she would release it, just because there are all these people behind it whose name that may be true. Published. Yeah,
Michael, if your aunt had balls, she'd be your uncle.
If what?
If your aunt had balls, she'd be your uncle.
All right, we do have to come towards a conclusion here, and hopefully now that we're kind of back from Christmas break and schedule is a little bit more set, we'll get back on a recording schedule. I apologize to listeners that's been a little inconsistent, but we're out of the holidays now. Things should settle down and be able to start recording more regularly, because God knows things are happening frequently enough that we can record. We could record every day if we needed to and never run out of things to talk about. But let's just go around, and assuming we'll record again in the next 2 weeks, kind of what are we looking for to happen or watching most in these next 2 weeks? And I'll start with you, Bill.
Well, I hope that it's more blunder, and I hope that the issues have kind of settled down, foreign intervention wide. But I would be very, very concerned if, in fact, we put boots on the ground in Iran or in Middle East or in Venezuela. Because if anybody thinks that, you're going to control the issues on the ground in Venezuela without that, you're living a dream. So, that's something I would be very interested to see not happen. But who knows?
Okay. Doctor?
Yeah, well, I enjoyed the discussion. It's really great to have somewhat different points of view. I think it would be also good eventually if we got somebody who actually supported Donald Trump and was able to intellectually argue their point of view. My main concern about the future is particularly the debt. I think the debt that's kind of growing, and neither of the parties are addressing it. Right now, the interest on the debt is more than the defense budget, and it's growing. So what to do about the debt? And that's something which has buried a lot of empires. So I am very concerned about it. And unfortunately, the politicians know that it's a major danger, but nobody is willing to say we are going to either increase taxes or cut benefits or combination of both, because that would make them unelectable. So it's also a responsibility of the people who don't seem to see the future very clearly.
It's a shame. I thought Elon Musk solved that whole thing with Doge. Judge.
Well, the debt, I know we've mentioned this before, and I agree again with the doctor. That's a chronic issue, and it has to be addressed. And certainly it's not going to be addressed because Trump never utters the word debt or deficit. All right. All he is concerned about is lowering interest rate, cheap money. We didn't even talk about this Jerome Powell situation.
Right. Yeah.
One thing I'm concerned about in the near future, though, is this talk from the president about Greenland. Now, I hope and pray that blows over, because that would cause us immeasurable difficulties with our allies, and that's another, by the way, that's another mineral resource grab as well. That has, in my mind, absolutely nothing to do with national defense. We have a base there, and we can have as many bases there as we want, pursuant to treaty. So I'm concerned about that, and I'm also waiting to see what does happen in Iran. I hope that they can remove the mullahs and move forward, but certainly we don't want to get involved on the ground there. So we might have some information on those issues within the next couple of weeks or so.
Joe, just one more thing. It just to cozy up to dictators, I find it ironic, or not so ironic, but historic that you have Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, in Maryland living and basically doing his work to get the backing of the United States government to return the Shah of Iran, which is absurd. You know, people rejected that a long time ago. But Trump likes dictators. We'll see how that pans out, and that bears watching.
Well, I have two things. Number one is I'd like to see if anybody, anytime, not just in these next couple of weeks, could ever teach Donald Trump that being an asylum seeker does not mean you came from an insane asylum, because we hear that over and over again from him about immigrants. But the other thing, and it has to do with foreign affairs and something we haven't really been touching on in this episode, but certainly will in the future, is I'm curious to continue to see what happens with Greenland and Iran, of course, but also with Ukraine. We didn't mention Ukraine at all this episode, but there also was this nugget in Fiona Hill's testimony back in the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump. Fiona Hill is a Russian expert. She worked for the State Department for many years. And she testified that she heard chatter back then about the Russians basically pushing this idea of promoting an old spheres of influence, Congress of Vienna, Metternich idea of America would be free to do what they wanted to do in Venezuela, and Russia would back off their support for Venezuela. And in return, America would back off of support for Ukraine, and Russia would be given a more free hand in that part of the world. And it was just kind of one line in her testimony a few years ago. But it obviously raises questions now that America has taken action in Venezuela, and Russia kind of half-heartedly protested the whole thing and said, "Oh no, don't do that yet. Okay." And now there's is America pulling back from Ukraine? And of course, I'm very worried about what's going on there. So that's something I'm watching in these next couple weeks. And maybe the next episode we'll talk more about some of these foreign policy issues, because we might see developments in Iran. We might see what happens, or at least what plays out with Greenland and Denmark. Those evil Danes, you got to watch out for them. So I think that'll be a more of a focus in this next episode that we'll record. So listeners out there, let us know what you're watching in these next couple weeks. Also reach out to us with your thoughts on issues. certainly if you agree with us, we love hearing how right we are. But if you disagree with us too, reach out to us with your thoughts and why we're wrong. We could share your thoughts on a future episode. So stay informed out there, watch the news, and we'll see you again soon for another episode of Wigs for Wigs. Take care, everybody.
R.I.P. Bobby Weir.
The views expressed in Wigs for Wigs are purely those of the individual speakers and are not meant in any way to represent the views of any places of employment.